control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I am your host, Brent Thomas. It's our Wednesday show. That's 2 hours of paranormal fun for each and every one of you at no extra charge. So how can you go wrong, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. Hope you guys are having a good week, whatever your situation is. We are here to try to make it just a little bit better, or at least distract you with colorful stuff and off the cuff humor, as we can whip it up fresh every day. Let's see. We got a good show lined up for you guys, but I guess I can introduce both extra people that are on the show. Not extra. I mean, Don, of course, is a regular, but we have an extra special guest today, and it's going to be hopefully a great, fun episode. If not, he'll never come back, but we are welcoming not only our very own Don Longbeard, but we are also welcoming Kade Moir, host and creator of the Believe podcast out of Australia. And Kade, as I was telling you before, I think we're setting a world record in social distancing.
Yeah, I think we are. It's quite a bit of a distance, really, isn't it, between you and I?
I don't think there's any risk of any infection happening here.
Well, I think one of us is taking this a little bit more seriously than the other, and I'm looking at Don here, and I'm quite jealous that he's got that beautiful little face mask going on.
I know. It all fits too.
It's what he would look like without that long, luscious beard. Welcome to the show, Don. How you doing, brother?
Doing good. So how is everybody?
We're good.
Except because it's like 80 degrees where he is.
Yeah, Kate's always fine.
It's quite warm. I've actually got the aircon trying to chill the room down a little bit.
Well, we just call that the windows here. Kate, it's still pretty chilly here, but we had a really beautiful day, so I can't complain too much. We're getting to the good stuff now, thank God. But how's Australia holding together, brother? Everything cool down there?
It is. We are doing pretty good, kind of in the grand scheme of things when it comes to this whole COVID-19 type of world we're living in at the moment.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking a little bit before we hit go on here, and we've only just kind of touched over 6,000 cases, confirmed cases of it here in Australia. So we seem to be flattening the curve, so they say, which is good. So it's fingers crossed there's a speedy end to all of this, because it's just flat out terrible for everyone, but especially for businesses and people with jobs and things like that. Holy moly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Certainly people are feeling the crunch, but we at the Portal are trying to do what we can to keep people distracted and entertained. And I know you've been doing a lot of shows over there on the Believe podcast. What have you guys been up to over there lately?
Oh, mate, we are just about to launch season 7. So I figured out this great little thing where I can just do 10 episodes at a time, have a couple of weeks off, and come back and release another 10. So, I know that will probably make you two boys quite jealous. We're pumping out 48,000 pieces of content a week. So it's good, because season 7 drops, I think, in a week or two. I think it's on... It's always on a Wednesday. So season 7 is going to kick off with this really, really awesome crop circle story, because I haven't had anyone come on to talk about crop circles, and This one really scared the crap out of me, to be honest.
Really? Wow.
About
Yeah.
circles?
Crop circles.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crop circles, and I mean, like, I don't want to give away what happens on the. I know what you were thinking there, Don. It, but I don't want to give away too much. But like, it may have been a pretty close encounter with something.
Wow.
Wow. For you, you personally?
No, the gentleman that I interviewed.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm always glad these things happen to the people who come on my show and never happen to me, because honestly, I don't know how these people get on with their lives with some of the things that I've heard. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, it really is. I gotta agree with you that, especially hearing some of the horror stories that people have endured, and you think of home, and that's like safe. That's supposed to be safe, and your place, that's your shelter against the world. And when things are going to hell at home, I mean, and obviously I'm talking supernaturally and paranormally. Of course, there's plenty of other ways hell can, home can turn into hell, but I'm just speaking in supernatural terms. That's got to be a horrible place to live, and a horrible place. I don't know. I got to give a lot of people credit as well, because how they continue with their lives and still with a semblance of normalcy is just Herculean to me.
Absolutely, it's astonishing, and the fact that a lot of these people can just kind of live with it, and then it just becomes a part of their normal life, is outstanding to me. Because if I, like, hypothetically, if I lived in a haunted house and I was kind of getting tormented in it, every night, or every so on, it would not only play like tricks on your sanity, but it would just make you want to just pack up and leave everything.
Right. No, I agree. But I guess that's the cool part about doing these shows. Now, you've been on the show before, and we've talked about this a little bit. But have you found that in doing your show that you realize how little you knew? Like before you started, did you think you had this stuff kind of all nailed down and kind of figured out?
Oh, I think everyone does who has a paranormal podcast. They come into it and they would think, okay, this is what aliens are, this is what Bigfoot are, this is what a Yowie is, this is what ghosts are. It's all bread and butter type of stuff. But when you talk to these people, you start to realize that everyone's encounter is so unique and so different, because the thing that I notice is everyone's encounter is so personal that it happens to them. It doesn't happen really to anyone else. So the way they interpret it is always going to be different from the way that I would. So when I see it from their perspectives, because I take an absolutely backseat approach to everyone that comes on the show, because I don't want to go into a conversation with a preconceived idea or anything where I'm trying to push a narrative from their encounter or anything like that. So I let them really take the wheel. And in doing that, I get to have these, like, I guess I would say, an out-of-body experience with their encounter, which is a really unique and interesting way to approach these. Because when you say, oh, you saw a ghost, it must have been like this. But when they tell you, no, it actually happened like this over X amount of time, and these types of things happen, and it made me feel like this, it absolutely changes it.
Yeah. I think so as well. And the other thing that I find curious is that there just seems to be this random timing to things. Although I don't think it's probably as random as we think, but it's really crazy that for like 3 days, things will just be exploding and going crazy. And then all of a sudden you get like 3 weeks of this calm, and then it blows up again, and maybe 2 days and it'll blow up again. And it's these random timings. It's almost like, putting people in a state of shell shock.
Absolutely. I could imagine, that's the perfect way to really explain that, because there's, like you said, no rhyme or reason. You feel like things are getting back to normal, and then, you hear these stories of people and everything kind of gets turned upside down again. And the worst part is when this stuff starts to follow them to different houses and things like that.
I know. Oh man, that would be the worst. You think, oh God, thank God we're getting out of this place, and you move into the new place, and there it is again. It's like, oh no. Oh man, my heart just breaks for those people. But let me ask you, Kade, now doing the show, you cover all the topics just like we do. I mean, you have a huge laundry list of things that you guys discuss and go into on the Believe podcast, but what's your favorite to discuss, or do you have one?
Oh, I'm always on the lookout for Yowie stories, because In Australia, that's the Yowies our version of, your Bigfoot, your Sasquatch. And not a lot of people want to talk about those encounters because I don't know what the stigma around this is over in the United States, that if you see something like this, you're crazy, you're loopy, you need to be kind of put away. But that's very much what it's like here in Australia. So people are pretty apprehensive to come forward and share these stories. But there's also lots and lots of great communities online on Facebook for people who have had these types of encounters. But even then, it's still a big leap of faith to come on a platform like yours or mine, and share your story to thousands and thousands of people, because you're really letting go of that. You're letting go of that ownership of that story. It's something that instantly becomes a little bit more real, and people can then judge you on it. And I guess you really do. You got to have pretty thick skin when it comes to this type of stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's gotten better in the U.S. for that kind of stuff, though. I think the dialogue is coming more easily now than ever before, and it just seems like people have really embraced the idea that there's these mysteries out there, like the Bigfoot and Sasquatch and skunk ape, or Grassman, whatever name you choose. But it's such an incredibly widespread and huge phenomena in our whole nation, as it is in yours. But it's nice that people can have those dialogues now without the backlash and the feelings of that they're gonna eat it for the rest of their lives socially just for being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not saying that the online communities are perfect, or
Sure.
everyone's perfect in the way that they can do this, because there's still so much hostility even between people who have had encounters, because it's one of these things that there's so many people out there that will fake this stuff, that will lie about this stuff, and that's their prerogative for doing that, and that's their choice. But what that does is it really does create a lot of turmoil or grief for these people who have had the encounters genuinely. And it starts to create almost like a distrust within that kind of Yowie Bigfoot community of, well, no, you didn't really see this because that was different to what I saw, or something like that, when one person may be absolutely full of crap.
Yeah. Well, and we're seeing that too. I think that because there's two huge camps. There's the camp that it's a flesh and blood only, just undiscovered, possibly primate, possibly hominid. So those people would be kind of one large camp. And then the other large camp would be, no, this is an interdimensional, perhaps even extraterrestrial being that has supernatural powers and, is very mysterious and perhaps even mystical. And it is a rift. I guess when I first started doing this, I was like totally in the flesh and blood. It was just out there. It was really smart. It was good at avoiding us, but it was definitely a living, breathing animal without, any kind of weirdness. They're just very good at hiding. But in talking to all the witnesses and people that I have doing the show, and in hearing them describe things like glowing eyes, not just reflecting eyes, but glowing, when there's no ready light source anywhere nearby, and suddenly their eyes are just, creating light. And things like, somebody called in once and had witnessed one of them walking kind of away from him in a field, but as he was watching it walk, it was literally, as it stepped, was phasing out and was disappearing, like fading away, and then was suddenly gone. And, after hearing so many of those, I don't know. I mean, I can't believe that all those people are lying. And I'm talking like many different kinds of people. And it's not just, and I'm not degrading anybody, but, the stereotypical, guy who's, maybe a little deep into the bottle and he has a Sasquatch sighting. I'm talking like people from all walks of life and very intelligent and professional people. Like, for instance, Ron Moorhead, who was just on the show, his experiences have been incredible, and the information he's putting on the table, it makes me willing to at least embrace those ideas for the sake of exploring them.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, the thing that I always go into any of these types of interviews with people who have had these encounters is that these people saw what they saw. No one else knows what they saw.
Yeah.
And
right.
It's not up to me to say, yeah, what you saw, that was definitely a Yowie, a Bigfoot. But no, they definitely don't do what you've just said, because at the end of the day, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
It's their encounter, not mine. And truly, nobody knows at this stage. There's no one hasn't got one.
Uh-oh. Did we lose him?
He froze. Uh-oh.
We might have lost Kade. All right. Must have grabbed the Fosters. That was me just checking. Just checking. That was the way to find out if he was really still there or not. Oh, there he is. I think he's coming.
There we go. Someone must have stopped winding the internet wheel here in Australia.
Is it all cranked up now and good to go?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, where did we lose you there? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not too sure where we got cut off, but yeah, essentially, at the end of the day, no one has one of these creatures to test or to research, so we don't really know what's going on with them.
Yeah.
There's every I guess hypothesis or guess that comes to a Bigfoot could be right, because who knows?
Very true. Good point. But how widespread are the experiences there? And have you noticed any change in the amount reported due to the wildfires and all the crazy fires that were going on down there?
You know what? I haven't heard of a Yowie encounter for a good 2 to 3 months, and that would really line up pretty closely with how the fires were happening. There's a lot of talk in the Australian Yowie community about what happened to the Yowies. Were they swallowed up by the fires? Did they get away? Did they hide? Mm-hmm. Nobody knows.
Okay. Yeah, and that's, I think, what was biggest on my mind. Well, of course, all of the natural fauna over there and people. I mean, it was such a horrible tragedy. And is it just decimated just a huge swaths of land like we've been led to believe over here?
Yeah, it has, but Australia recovers really well on bushfires. It's kind of made to burn and regenerate, because it's the country is so dry and barren where this kind of happens that it will happen more regularly than what the media probably has shown, but not to that extent, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, the media has a tendency to create their own reality, but I think that was on all of our minds, because just watching all of that mayhem and all of that tragedy, it was heartbreaking. And I was thinking, oh my God, and we of course have had wildfires here in the U.S. with our, the fires that were going crazy in California and up where Don and I are. It's this pristine forests, but it's all like these conifers, and they're like a freaking match, with that that sap just goes up like a match, and it's crazy. So, I've been many times since I've lived here, and Don can speak to this more than I can, but with red sunsets and that smell like your neighbor's always burning leaves all the time, So we get a lot of that up here.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just the nature of where we live, We need to practice more conservation when it comes to taking care of the forest and things like that, so things don't happen like that. However, as Kade said, he said basically his country is made to burn, because it's of its temperate, nature. But that's the nature of things. Lightning strikes, it burns. That's all it does. And and I've always wondered that question too. What happens to all these cryptids that people bump into and have stories about? What happens to all of them, and so where the heck do they run to in Australia? It's not like they have a forest of dogwood trees right down the road to get into, it really makes you wonder how even with this scenario, how do they continue to be able to hide themselves?
Right. Don, your mic is really, really hot.
Is it?
Yeah, it was really loud.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think so. Does that sound better to you, Kade?
Better?
Yeah, a little bit, little less peaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, fine.
No, I mean,
it's just that manly voice that you got there, Don. It's just bellowing out.
I know. I've been told that all my life. My God, why is he so loud? It's like I speak from the lungs.
Yeah. Don talks from his toes, but no, I think it's a fascinating thing. Of course, we're gonna have not to brag or anything, Kate, but we're gonna have Dean Harrison come on the show, and
Look, I can give you a hot tip. That's a good get. He's a hard man to get a hold of. So and from all reports, the guy's had some absolutely fascinating Yowie encounters. I think he's actually been attacked by one, where it kind of shoved him or something. I don't want to like take the shine off his encounter because I'm only kind of putting pieces together that I've heard.
right.
But the guy is probably the number one person in the world when it comes to Yowie encounters that you would, I guess, want to get opinions of, because he's got the biggest record in Australia of all these encounters. He has a great website. He has a great forum. He even has a YouTube channel where he does these really raw interviews with these people, and kind of does a more scientific approach to, I guess, the encounters, so he can really, I guess, track everything that happened, where we maybe focus a little bit more on the fantastical side and the emotional responses, where he really does document everything that happens in really great detail.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be a fun discussion, and I'm really looking forward to that because, what a great opportunity, and I think it's these cryptids are popping up all over the place, whether they're reappearing or what, from our folklore or whatever. But Australia, I think per capita, you guys have about the most dizzying array of different cryptids that I've ever heard of. Right?
Do you have any favorites? Because one of my favorites, and I've never heard of, and I think I spoke to you about this one before. It's the bunyip.
I was going to say that one.
This water-based type of creature that's just like a giant monster type of thing, it's like it's an Aboriginal folklore, of course, and there's so many different versions of it, but essentially it's just this monstrous thing that will kind of take you away if you're being naughty. Is the that's one of the
Sure.
folklores that go to it. So I think it's more of like a boogeyman type of thing. To keep little kids in line.
Well, they did the same thing, of course, with the wood boogers over here, which is another name for Sasquatch. It's the boogeyman. Is something that we grew up with here in the U.S. and apparently a lot of natives used their versions of the Sasquatch as children cautionary tales too. You better stay in, or Janasqua will take you off to her mountain cave and eat you, and it's kind of that same thing. So I think, do you think though that the bunyip doesn't actually exist and it's just a folklorish cautionary tale, or do you think it's based upon some form of actual experiences?
You know what? I think there's more of a down to earth approach to it, and way back in the day, and I'm talking tens of thousands of years ago, of course. One of our native animals here, the wombat,
Okay.
used to be a huge version of that, and I'm wondering if maybe that was confused to, or the stories were made up to be that maybe this giant wombat was a bunyip, because I've done a fair bit of Googling and things like that, and I've never actually found any first-hand encounters with a bunyip or anything like that. So I think it's more of a story lost to time, or like a creature lost to time, rather than it being a flesh and blood creature in the sense of how these stories make it out to be.
Well, how about things like in the outback? There's this legend or these tales of these giant dinosaur-like lizards still living out there. Do you ever get any of those?
I hear stories like that all the time, and I hear about like dinosaur birds flying around.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, Australia is a really big country, and there's a lot of unexplored areas, because like Australia is, the same size as the United States roughly. It's gigantic, and there's only very small populated areas kind of spread throughout it. And the places, I guess, if you go from the East Coast to the West Coast, there would only be a handful of really populated areas that would, I guess, have the chance to see anything like this.
Yeah. Well, and so legend is always going to be the stories of the land, and there is no scientific precedent other than what people have managed to go out and scratch up. So that's
Yeah,
interesting. Do you think it's
yeah.
possible?
I don't know. I like to think that there's stuff like that out there because, you know, I love to think that some animals haven't been lost to time.
Yeah.
And I just think it would be absolutely fantastic that there would be, potentially pterodactyls flying around because somehow maybe they got away with it. And, maybe some land lizards or something like that, walking around upright on 2 feet would be quite fantastic. And who knows, if you're into your conspiracy theories and things like that, there is Pine Gap out in the middle of Australia as well. So maybe they're making them in there if you're into that.
What is Pine Gap? I'm not familiar with that personally.
Oh, Pine Gap is basically Australia's version of Area 51. It's
Oh,
a CIA-owned, I guess, secret military base here in Australia.
jeez.
I mean,
Nice.
what? No, that.
Did you know that, Don?
No, not at all. I didn't know that.
Pine Gap. No, that's a new one to me too. I mean, we've got our own breadbasket full of those over here too. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. So it's still affiliated allegedly with RCIA or yours?
Yeah, both.
Oh.
It's a joint US and Australia base, and it's mostly used for research and then stuff like that. But it's kind of research, and it's kind of being just placed as the Australians version of Area 51 because it is so secretive. It's so out of the public's eye, and the fact that you have to take a huge journey to actually get to this place, it kind of just leads credence to all those conspiracy type theories.
Mm-hmm. Now, getting back to like the dinosaurs and the things like that, here the thing is that for a long time I kind of entertained the idea that well maybe there's some kind of odd portals that happen naturally in our world, and whether it's a multiverse kind of thing where there's just two of those realities will kind of bump into each other and create this window of opportunity where something may come in and then go back out or something. But the problem that I run into with that theory is that the dinosaurs, when they existed on this earth, were dealing with an atmosphere that was several times more in a magnitude of oxygen than what we have today. So I don't know if could they just take a wander into our situation without just bricking, turning into a brick. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I've never actually considered that type of aspect when it comes to that because, I mean, I guess if dinosaurs or some of these creatures, if they were still living today, the natural evolution would allow their lungs to,
Yes.
of course, adapt to the difference in oxygen. But that theory of if there's portals open and if they come in, there's a very good chance that they would potentially suffocate due to the I guess of oxygen now that there was potentially back then. That's that's interesting. That's a really good theory. You're gonna make me think about that quite a lot now.
That's my job, Kade. I cause thinking. Thinking may occur. Don, we need a new T-shirt. Caution. Thinking may occur.
Let me write that down. Hold on a sec. I got my pen.
And it has to have a big caution sign at the top of it.
Yeah, it's got to be a caution sign. Yeah, that's
it.
the action
That's
right
it.
there. There you go, Kade. You're developing our merchandise for us. This is wonderful.
Yeah, just 20% royalties. That'll be fine. You can put a little Believe logo on the bottom, just so they know where to look for the right podcast.
The only belief going on is you thinking you're getting royalties. But that's just how we roll here. No, we're happy to give you a nod on every sale. We'll put a thumbs up to you, salute in our hearts, as it were. But no, I think that look, there's things like the Mbembe in Africa and the Congo that's believed to be out there, which apparently means the stopper of rivers or whatever, I think is what that name translates to. And it's supposed to be this brontosaurus looking creature that still lives there. Now, the interesting thing is that apparently when people have gone in there researching this, that they asked them to describe, what it looked like. And they did their best to describe, and they weren't really able to make heads or tails of it. But I think somehow or for some reason, somebody had like a dinosaur flip book there, and they were like, they got to like a brontosaurus or something, and like, oh, that's it, and the natives that had witnessed this thing or heard stories of at least of it, that's what they considered it to look like. And so there is precedent for these things being around. I don't know, it's credible. I know that Adam Davies went over and looked, and I don't know, I haven't read his book to know exactly what he found, but I find it exciting that that kind of research is happening, and because I really agree with, and Ron said it when he was on the show. He's like, he brought us the Tesla quote. It's like when we just start really researching the non-physical, we'll make more strides than we have in all of combined, history. And I think that that's true. I think that whatever this stuff is, whatever it all is, and what I find really interesting, Kate, is the bleed through from phenomena to phenomena. And like, and by that, what I mean is that, okay, so one thing that I've picked up through the years of doing the show and talking, with different people, as well as with Wes. And I don't mean to keep name dropping. Forgive me. I mean, it's not my intention, but they do come up, and Wes and I do talk. And when he was on the show, he played clips, and apparently, like the woman that he had interviewed that was from, she's from England, but she was over here and had a close encounter. She heard the vocalizations, and then when Wes, played the Sierra sounds for her, she's like, "That's what it sounded like." Now, other people have apparently seen and heard mountain giants, and they report that it sounds very much the same as the Sierra sounds. And so there's a bleed through in there, where there's different phenomena. It's kind of interrelated, but is there an ancient language there? And then when you talk about ghosts and you talk about UFOs, sometimes it's really hard to figure out what people are experiencing, because there's several ghost stories that sound like abductions, and there's several abductions that sounds like ghost stories. I mean, it's hard to understand where is the defining line on this. So I think that there is some kind of continuity between these things, or some factors that they share.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that is probably also worth noting is the effect that pop culture's had on the paranormal world, because it's very easy to take probably aspects of a lot of these things and say, I saw this in a movie, I saw this on a TV show, because you just have a look. There is, I guess, the media is kind of pushing these types of narratives a little bit more, because I mean, we're getting more UFO disclosure, we're getting things like that. So it's not really uncommon to kind of see these things just kind of placed little bits here and there within your standard media watching. And there's movies like Encounters of the Third Kind, where that really set the precedent for what potentially a gray alien would look like. And you talk to anyone now, and it kind of means it all kind of fits that same mold. And then you go down a rabbit hole of is that kind of training us to know if this ever happens, this is what they will look like, this is what they are, or is that just okay, that fits the bill, so that's now how I will always kind of see it. And I mean, that's the beauty of pop culture. It will just make its way into any situation that it can, and it can really have an influence on so many things. And I mean, research wouldn't be I guess, avoided from it, if that's the right word for it. But I genuinely believe that all these things do happen, but I feel like there could always be a small percentage that get just contaminated by the essence of pop culture just bleeding into what they think these scenarios should be like.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that you're right, but I have to wonder, it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario, right? So like,
Yeah.
for instance, a lot of people were saying, look, nobody saw a flying saucer until the B movies of the 50s, where they showed, of course, the flying saucers. But there has been a very long-standing tradition of UFOs going back long before there were B movies, into the 1800s anyway in the U.S., and still further back. You can see, of course, there's examples that are depicted in medieval works of art, and so in biblical references of these, fiery chariots in the sky and stuff like that. It's a matter of them trying to relate it in terms that make sense verbally for what they saw. But
Yeah.
I think that it kind of makes you wonder which one came first. So was there? I agree with what you're saying, that once that's impressed upon the psyche of the public, then it's probably going to be a commonly referenced thing as far as how they look, because that's in there somewhere. But I don't know where did Steven Spielberg get his inspiration for how to make them look? That's what's curious.
That's the big question, isn't it? It's kind of like, was that sourced from, and when I say original content, is that sourced from original content from someone actually having experience with something like this?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm wondering. I don't know, and I don't pretend to know, so I'm not trying to speak in contrast to what you're saying. I'm just throwing it out there too. It's just like, well, which one would have come first, and is there an earlier precedent that he was pulling from for those things? I don't know. I really don't know.
And to kind of like answer the question, the overlap, it's definitely there between things. And whether that is caused by pop culture or if that's actually caused by, there is a common link between everything, it's interesting at the end of the day, either way.
Right. You know what occurs to me, and it gets way, way out there. So when you start going down these paths of thought, and it's like, well, I'm trying to make sense of this. So what occurs to me is that, I really believe that we fundamentally create our experience. And so are these things appearing in manners that are going to be maybe less stressful in some ways because there's a familiarity to it? So in other words, is it spiritual beings, or are they all perhaps UFOs? But they're coming in a way that people will most readily accept based upon the individual. So is that why there's a continuity between a haunting and people, having out-of-body experiences to abduction scenarios, and which one is it? Or is it neither of those, but it's just taking the form of something that would be familiar in order not to, drive people over the edge or make them crack?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that's a really good point, because I have spoken to people who say that just a lady that I interviewed just recently, she encounters fairies throughout her life, and she says that fairies are around everywhere. Everyone is encountering fairies, but the way that they show themselves to people is always unique. So she said, and one of her, I guess, really good examples was she was out on a walk with her partner, and this really fantastic, beautiful looking butterfly landed on a leaf near him. She saw it plain as day as a fairy. He saw it as the butterfly. And it really just comes down to how an individual, and this was her explanation for it, which I think was great, was it's an individual's openness to a situation and how they would react or cope to it. Because and just using this fairy encounter as the example, is that fairy knows that she is able to perceive what it is, so it's comfortable showing itself to her, but knew the boyfriend wasn't quite on her level. So for him, it looked like the butterfly. So maybe that leads into what you're kind of saying here, is because it's more so probably a coping mechanism than anything else to how an individual would react to a situation.
Well, yeah, and that makes perfect sense. So, like, take for instance the amount of times owls come up in abduction scenarios. Many abductees report these owls, seeing these strange owls staring at them, and so is that a cognitive defense, putting that on there? That's a great point. Could it be just a cognitive coping mechanism, that the mind takes over and replaces that imagery with something just so the person, can cope with it on an emotional level? That's a great
Absolutely.
point. Yeah.
It happens to people who go through very traumatic things. So it's not like it's something that's just made up. We know this type of thing happens. So when you encounter, let's say hypothetically, Don ran into a gray alien right after this, and he wasn't able really to cope with that, he might see it as something else. He might see it as a to the Believe podcast.
He would-
He's dropping that every now and then, isn't he?
just-
That's a good point, though. I mean, you know, how does somebody process that kind of an experience, and also, how does it process after the experience? Does it create a PTSD? Does it is it a depression? Do you go into depression? Do you get just totally wacky and become that person? And those, I think, obviously those are also coping mechanisms of the whole thing. And people will only look at your symptoms, but not your story.
Yeah.
And so, and who can really look into a story like this? I mean, the best they could do with Betty and Barney Hill was do some regression on them, and that was pretty much it.
well, there was some testing on their clothes, though, wasn't there, Don?
Yeah, there was some kind of a stain on her blue dress.
Yeah.
Was it a blue dress? It was a dress.
Yep.
Sorry, blue dresses are the only thing that stick in my mind when we talk about stains. But yeah, there was. I've never.
I don't even know what that means.
I've never read any new analysis of the dress itself. So we just know that it's a stain on a dress from supposedly her experience with these aliens.
That's a good point.
And that raises a good question about the whole regression therapy thing. And I hear a lot of people who would say regression therapy is, it's so open-ended about what you can really get out of that, because generally those types of situations are almost manufactured to make you believe something else. So you could walk into let's say hypothetically, you walk into a regression therapy office, and on the wall you see pictures of grey aliens, monsters, things like that. You see little bits of, maybe little statues or whatever around that are just kind of planting these little, I guess, pictures inside your mind. And then you have to have full 100% trust and commitment to the therapist doing the regression, that they aren't trying to push their own little narrative within your memories.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
I mean, that's false memories or memory implants by therapists are real common, and it's a real big legal defense in certain cases. So, there's got to be some merit to that. You're right. It becomes. I mean, memory is a funny thing, and it's tough. I suppose extra tough when it's such a traumatic experience. I mean, I sometimes think, and this isn't me degrading anybody, but I sometimes think when we hear reports of like 15-foot tall Sasquatch, you think, well, is that an accurate measurement, or is it a fear? That in your memory this became so much bigger because it's completely humbling. Of course, it would have to be next to something that is so much larger and so much more powerful than we are. So does it become 20 feet tall when it was maybe 9 or 10? And I don't know. I'm not trying to say that it was or wasn't, but I think that, when you're speaking of functions of memory, you have to at least have a latitude for that. I mean, some people, I don't know if I can really get into this, but one situation that I was in personally, I was a security guard right out of high school, and I worked in this mall, and this lady was working in the mall. She was a very attractive young lady, and she was leaving her store, and they shut the storefront, and it was an indoor mall. And she's leaving, and she's in the back ways that there was a back hallway connecting every store and then to the outside and stuff. So she's going down this back hallway, which is out of all the public view completely. And this man grabs her and starts dragging her away, and she's kicking and screaming. And finally, he realizes, wait, this is not going to go easy, and he basically drops her and runs away. And she sees him. Well, in her description of him, he was like 6'5" or 7 or something like that. He was huge, and so we're looking at, and the odd part, and this isn't me, self-congratulating myself, but she did do a sketch with a sketch artist, and I did end up catching the guy. It was really cool, but the guy was nowhere near 6'7" or 6'5". He was more like 5'11", but in her mind, he became enormous, and that was a function of her fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that does lead a lot of credence to situations like you just said before, where the fear is absolutely taking over, and your mind is just like, well, this Yowie, this Bigfoot, this thing was gigantic, and like you said, the reality is it could have been half the height that it was. It's just in that moment, all your other senses, they're probably working overdrive, and the adrenaline's pumping. It's just how it goes. Because a reference that I was going to make was something very similar. It's if you've ever had to give a police report about a situation with maybe you witnessed something that multiple other people did, there's a good chance that all those recounts of what just happened, everyone was there that saw it, would give a different description.
Right. Good point. Yep.
Yeah, that's something that we had to deal with when I was working in the prisons. Everybody saw something different, and it didn't matter if they were all standing there all at the same time. It's just they all had a different perception of what really happened. One guy punched another guy, but nobody noticed that the other guy had stabbed him, but three people, and then all of a sudden now there's a stabbing, or, it was this guy, and our personal, I have to say this, our personal biases, our personal feelings do affect how we see things. And that's just the way it is. Like Brent said, the gal said that he was like 6.5, 7 foot tall, when in fact he was like 5'11", It's just that perception, and I would imagine the amount of adrenaline and it just alters your reality at that moment. So it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a car accident or if it's, being dragged down a lonely hallway somewhere. It's going to affect your perception. And then when the truth comes out, or when the truth is revealed, the full truth, it's slightly different than it really was.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Good points. Good points. Oh, thank you, Aussie. Thank you very much. Nice donation from Mr. Aussie Tiger. Thank you, sir. We sure appreciate it. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. But yeah, I just think that comes into play. But there are times, of course, where these witnesses have a visual landmark in order to go back and get proper measurements. And so I'm not saying that they can't be that big, but it's something that makes you wonder, because when you're thinking about like a Yowie or a Bigfoot, 8 feet is huge. That's like my ceiling. I think I have 9 foot ceilings in here, but 9 feet. Let's just say 9 feet. That's a tall thing, and I'm a lot smaller than that. But if I saw that outside, I would probably swear it was 15 feet, just because it's so much bigger and it's so out of my normal point of reference. I'm not used to observing a living bipedal creature that's that much larger than me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. And perspective is everything as well, because if there's landmarks, if there's something that you can compare it to, that makes that just a little bit easier for you. Because I really enjoy when I see someone have an encounter and they go back and they use visual references for measuring points and things like that, because I think that would really make your encounter that you had, it just gives it that little bit more of a concrete evidence that, hey, this creature was genuinely this big, because I'm now standing where I saw it, and here's a picture of where I referenced it to I guess reach.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And then, if you have things like that, like tree branches that are broken in its passing, well, that's where its head passed through, it makes it a lot easier. So, I mean, it's not that it's beyond the realm of possibility. It's just that, we have a hard time, I think, as, emotional people, to gauge that objectively. But, if you have those physical landmarks and measures in place, then it's probably much more credible.
Absolutely. And everything that we're saying is absolutely not to take away from anyone's type of encounter, because I genuinely believe everyone that comes on my show experience the encounter in the way that they're mentioning it, because like I said earlier, these things are so personal, they're so individual, that there's no way for anyone else to say what you experienced wasn't really that.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, the call board is open. If you have a question for Kade, then let her rip. The number, of course, is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. And Kate, are you still good to go for the until we're done?
Yeah, I reckon so. If I do have to disappear for any reason, it's because I'm playing Daddy Daycare. For those who can maybe see in the background here, I've got the kids' toys plastered everywhere. So it just so happens to be that the office, aka the studio, is also the playroom. So if you see her running around in there, I might have to duck off.
Oh, okay, very good. Yeah, no worries at all. But it's sure a pleasure to have you here. I think we're going to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. Just need to use the facilities, but I'll be right back. And we'll be back with more of the Paranormal Portal with Don and I and our special guest, Mr. Kade Moir, right here. Don't go away. The roaring crowd, home run, and they go to the bleachers. I don't know. I got to use it somehow, Don. That's some crazy special effects you're giving us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Paranormal Portal. Don is he's experimenting with the new Paranormal Portal crowd noise.
I couldn't hear it. I don't know what was going on. I don't know what you guys were talking about. All I heard was Sounded like a plane flying overhead.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we heard.
That's about it.
Yeah, that kind of matches.
I don't know.
Did your beard ground out or something?
What is that? What up?
I'm just saying. I don't know. You had that mask on. You probably got this really big static charge cooking, and
Yeah. Back to the lovely Fluffy.
the lovely Fluffy. Is that what we're calling it, huh? All right. I don't. What did you say?
The Scratchy Lovins.
Speaking of Scratchy Lovins, Kade, you've had some pretty cool stories sent into you on the show. Huh?
Yeah. So that's something that we'll probably touch on tomorrow night there, because I'm joining you for another little live stream,
right.
which is going to be exciting.
That is right, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Kade Moir is going to be doing the night terrors with me tomorrow night. He's going to be bringing us terrors from down under. How does that pronunciation? Was that good?
Yeah, no, that was spot on, mate. It was. I'm about to hand you a declaration of you're a full-on Aussie now. You get one jar of Vegemite and you have to eat the whole thing in one go. Otherwise, it's revoked.
A Vegemite sandwich. Yeah, that and the Forsters, right?
Oh, don't even go there, mate.
No, I'm just kidding. What is the Australian beer? I just need to know.
Well, you know what? It depends, because there's so many states here in Australia that do their own beers.
Oh.
So it all depends on where you're currently located. You kind of have the beer of that state that you're in. The state that I'm in is Queensland. So the beer of choice here would be it's called 4X.
4X. Okay. So is that kind of like the microbreweries? I'm sorry. What was that? I chopped you off.
4X because apparently Queenslanders can't spell beer.
Now, is that kind of the same thing as the craze over here with the microbreweries and stuff? Same kind of thing?
No, because these are all owned by usually one big corporation. So it's just one big corporation, but they make a beer for every state. So, yeah, it kind of works that way. So like Victoria, they have a beer called Victoria Bitter. Over in WA, which is Western Australia, they have I think it's Emu Lager or something like that. So it's to be honest, it's probably all the same beer. It's just got a different label on it.
It's all Foster's in disguise.
Actually, what they do is here in Australia, they sell Foster's, put it in a different bottle, and they call it Crownies. So it looks a little bit fancier, and they charge double the price.
Oh, you're kidding! Oh no, I've never drank a Foster, so I don't know if it's decent or not. I mean, I'm not a drinker really. Anyway, I socially drink. Like somebody says, "I'll have a drink," and I say, "So shall I." Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here all night. Don's just looking down. Even his camera gave up hope there and went blurry. That's all I got.
That's the visual representation of how Don is feeling with his audio gear tonight.
Well, Don, your sound seems to be okay now. Are you muted?
Well, no, I'm not muted. The kid am I clipping anymore? Because
no, it was that rocket sound that was going crazy.
I have no idea what that was.
Oh, that wasn't on your end?
No, I have no idea what that was.
Oh, okay. Well, then the mystery continues, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Paranormal Portal. That's all I can say. We are the
machine.
What's that?
He's got some guts in the machine.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Maybe. So is my mic still clipping, Brent? You've got the master over there.
No, it seems to be okay. I mean, when we first started, you're real hot, but after you made those initial adjustments, it was pretty good. So it was pretty good. I just had to change the fader between when you were talking and Kade was talking because it was like a lot hotter from your side. But that's that fine studio gear you got over there. It's nice stuff, but we didn't really do a sound check before, ladies and gentlemen. So we are actually combining 3 studios into one show, and that's what you get. But where are we going to go from here? Let's see. What do you think, Kade? What should we discuss next?
Well, and this is if this is okay with you, but I would like to share a couple of the spookier episodes that have potentially been on my podcast.
Absolutely, please do.
So if there's a couple of people, well, there's a majority of people here who probably don't listen to the podcast, but if they were looking to get a good jumping in point, I've got like a couple of episodes from a couple of the seasons where I think if you want to have the pants scared off you, or you want to jump in on the deep end, these might be the ones to do it.
Take us home, brother.
So the first one that I think people would really, really enjoy, and it is one of the first interviews that I ever did on the podcast. It was from season 1, episode 4, and it's called UFOs in Country Victoria. And essentially this UFO encounter actually made Australia-wide news.
Oh.
It had a lot of press coverage. So this lady called Belle and her husband had this encounter with this UFO in the Victorian countryside, and it's one of the more interesting type of UFOs that I've ever heard of, because it kind of sounded like something out of War of the Worlds.
Wow.
And it sounds like this UFO was perched on a hillside, and it had these tentacles that were just coming out, and they were just doing random things. And the family, they saw this UFO, and they went to a police station to report it. And sure enough, a few hours later, they were starting to get questioned by the military about what happened.
That's intense. Wow.
It really is intense. And like the poor lady, I mean, she's still shaken up to it from it to this day, because it kind of opens up the question of, did this lady potentially have a run-in with the men in black? Right. She was told not to talk about it. It was something that was really tried to sweep under the rug, but it just so happened the news kind of got there, and she just shared it, and then it went nationwide.
And then was it a one-off event, or was there any other people who had experienced the same thing?
No, it was just a one-off event. So, in her opinion, she thought that potentially the army were doing some training on this hillside, because the way things were going, it was quite hectic, and essentially she kind of composed herself, and then these lights started to chase her a little bit. Her and her family really got scared. It leads to maybe a potential abduction or missing time, because she then remembers they should have crashed, but their car was then safely on the road much further down the track.
Wow.
And when I say much further down the track, it was about half an hour ahead of time of where they should have been.
Wow. That's intense. Yeah.
Yeah. So
roll the clip, brother.
Yeah, that one there, it's a great launching platform if you want to get into some Australian paranormal content, because that one really sets the tone early on. It's quite good.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, and that's the kind of event that I think that's the kind they make movies about. I mean, it's that profound. It sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm surprised that she hasn't done a book or something about these encounters, because the questioning that she was getting from and I say military is it's pretty full on, because her children were in the car. They were forced to go to different rooms and draw what they saw.
Oh man. Did you want to play a clip of that, or are we just discussing it?
We'll discuss it, because I mean the interview, it's quite a long interview, because there's so much that needs to come out of it. And I mean, if you had 45 minutes, yeah, I'd love to. But if for me to kind of play just a snippet of her encounter would really kind of take away from it, because it's just so intense, and it's you can hear how emotional she is about the encounter still to this day. And for me to take away from that, I always feel a little bit bad, because these people experience these things, and they're deeply personal. So I never want to say, oh, this part is the best part of their interview.
No, I agree, and it's bizarre, because what I always think of is, what are they doing? What are they doing? I mean, there's got to be a reason other than just idle curiosity. I mean, I think our planet is amazing and wonderful, but I don't think that they probably cross the stars, or for hundreds or millions of light years, or across dimensions, wherever the hell they come from, just to look at our plants. I think that I don't think that that's unique in the universe. I really don't. I think that planets like this are everywhere. But
Absolutely.
what is it that keeps bringing them here? What do you think?
Well, it's funny you say that because I interviewed a pretty prolific person last night, actually, for the podcast. Her name is Jane Pooley, and here in Australia, she made again national news for her encounter where she potentially has a well. In her telling is she has hybrid children with aliens, and from everything that she told me, the one reason that they're coming to Earth is so they can cross-pollinate their DNA with us, with them, and so they can eventually live on Earth with us. Which you take that whatever way you want, but I don't know if that's a positive thing. She says it's positive, but with every positive encounter that I hear that regards alien abductions, you know, there's not a bad one
No.
that isn't far away, because you hear about how terrified some of these people are in these encounters. It really makes you wonder, would you be open to having gray aliens come down to Earth to, do a crossbreeding program with you?
Right. The thing that always sticks out to me is that if they are as incredibly advanced to us as we believe they are, which is upwards of 1,000,000 years or so, more technologically advanced, how long would they put up with our shenanigans? I mean, really, if they were putting up their their UFO trailer park, how long are they going to put up with us beating the hell out of this planet? And I'm guessing probably not real long, because if they're planning on living here, they don't want us screwing this up.
Yeah, it's interesting because the opinion that she was giving me was very, very positive, and she says, look, maybe that the encounters that she's having with good aliens, and she goes, there's definitely bad ones out there, but the that she's been dealing with apparently want to come here for good reasons. They apparently have the same God as us, but that depends on who you ask who your God is. They have very much they have very human qualities in the sense that they love, they have families, they get married, they go on holidays. It's just that they look different.
Are these the Greys that we understand the Greys to be, or yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the very stereotypical Greys.
Okay. And it's kind of funny because I was actually just watching the Bucks County, Pennsylvania has the research group over there, and that's where Bill Burns was a part of.
He's gonna drop again.
Sorry. But they did interview, yeah, he and Eric Mantel did interview Betty Hill's niece, and I thought that was incredibly interesting. And what I found the most compelling was the compassion and the dialogue that apparently took place between Betty and the commander of the ship, and it didn't seem like we're your overlords and you're going to do what we want. They did what they wanted anyway, but at least there seemed to be a civility about it, and they seemed to feel like they had the right to do that, and that's what makes me think of things like in the U.S. the Eisenhower Accords that Don has talked so much about, that they must have an official agreement with someone up on high in the echelons of power and control, because they didn't seem to have any problem doing what they wanted, but they weren't without compassion in doing it.
Yeah, that's very eerily similar to everything that Jane told me last night, because
Wow.
she goes, there was like a treaty or something signed, and I can't remember which U.S. president that she said. It's evading my mind at the moment, but she did say that there was kind of like this treaty where they could come and take as many people as that they require, and they can do what they need to with them, but there has to be a bit of give and take. So the give was they give us a little bit of I guess a technology boost, which really does explain why computing power potentially increased tenfold over a very, very short time.
Right. Yeah.
Kate, so apparently back in 1953, 1954, Valiant Thor met with Eisenhower, and supposedly there were some Zeta Reticulans there, what we would call gray aliens, or what possibly are referred to as gray aliens. And there was kind of a galactic summit, and he came to it's called the Griada Treaty. So I think that's what she's referring to. But
Hmm.
supposedly in that agreement that I don't remember agreeing to, they said that they will abduct X many per year, with the proviso that they have to not remember anything. They are to be returned to their homes unscathed, in the original condition. It's like you can't return something if you've used it, right? So, but apparently it got to the point somewhere that some of them decided, well, that's not good enough for us, and we're going to do what we want, how we want, and we'll return them if we want. So I think that's probably the treaty that she's talking about. It's got to do with Eisenhower back in 53,
Yeah.
54, when he all of a sudden disappeared because he had a toothache.
I'm getting that you don't buy that, Don. No, but that's interesting, and it is. That's what I was. That's what when you were explaining that. That's what it brought to my mind was Betty Hill's experience. So I think that you having an opportunity to interview someone like that is really incredible.
Yeah, it really did open my eyes. And then out of all the interviews that I've done, this one, there's a few things that happen when I interview people. I believe them. I will go, wow, that's weird. I didn't think that could happen. Or my mind will be absolutely blown to pieces, and it kind of like just shatters how you might think of the world moving on from that type of thing. And that was definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to give away too much, because I mean it's a cracker of an episode and you're gonna have to subscribe to believe to listen to it. But what it does is it kind of shows that there is a lot more public knowledge about this than we may actually think, and it really reaches down to a grassroots level that it could be happening in your town right now.
Yeah, I mean it could be anywhere, and I have the distinction for myself of knowing that they're there because I've seen them. I didn't see aliens, but I saw craft, and I've seen craft a couple of times, and I've shared, of course, on your show, Kade, and I've shared here my experiences. But what I mean, they could be anywhere at any time with that cloaking ability, and they could be hovering above your house, and you would have no idea that they were there. And I don't know, it's just I mean, it's, to me it just seems like such a personal affront that they could just suck you up like like you're like you're something on the floor and someone's vacuuming, and they suck you up and they do whatever they want, but they can return you back, and you really won't have much. But it seems like people do have memories of these things. That now, was she regressed? Is that how she got to the point of remembering, or was she just left to remember?
Well, she had been taken all her life, so it's interesting because she was getting taken from, I believe she said about 3 to 4 years old.
Wow.
And apparently that back then, when she was getting taken at such a young age, that they don't actually do anything to the memories, because maybe it's a chemical compound, or maybe there's something that is not suitable for maybe a younger human at that stage.
Right.
But because of that, I can connect these little pieces throughout my journey, and now I can just get taken and I just talk to them. She actually refers to this one gray alien as Graham. Like they have regular names, which is absolutely fascinating to me. And of course, it wouldn't be every alien has Bob, Joe, Jim, things like that. She alluded to the fact that they have this technology that will convert their language into English, because what's the odds that a race that travels from wherever they're from speak the exact same language that you do? Will be a fraction of an impossibility.
Yeah.
And yeah, with that there, she said that she has this gray alien that visited her since she was 4, still talks to him to this day whenever she potentially gets taken up. and she has these. She calls them humalien, which I think is a fantastic term for a crossbred human and alien.
Yeah.
Um, children, and they have their own families and everything, and they're all kind of living in one world between, I guess, gray aliens and these human gray hybrids.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna have to check out this episode because it sounds absolutely fascinating and brilliant. But there's so many questions. I have to wonder why. What I'm wondering the most is why are they so transfixed on this planet to come to and to be a part of? Maybe my assumption is incorrect that there aren't that many planets like this out there. But it just seems like there's so many billions and billions and billions of planets that how special can the whole Goldilocks zone life thing be? And that's what I don't quite understand. But I'm going to check that out, brother. Thank you for that heads up on that one. That's it. Really,
Yeah,
really interesting.
it is. It is. And what's really fantastic is whatever Don's eating looks amazing. Um,
Well,
but what's great is she says that these aliens they talk on very scientific terms because she said that their intelligence is above us, but it's not to a level that is they're miles ahead. It's just like the way that she kind of explained it to me is it would be an adult talking to a child in
yeah.
that sense of
Hmm.
I guess advance in intellect. But what's quite interesting is the way that she says why they want to come to Earth is because the planet that they were on is essentially barren. Its resources were gone. It's been depleted. And she said, well, why come to us? And she goes, well, we're doing the same thing that you're doing while you're trying to go to Mars. You're just trying to populate another planet to live.
Right.
And when it gets explained in what I like to call those kindergarten terms,
Uh-huh.
it's really easy for everyone to understand why potentially these types of beings would visit Earth.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, it's like trying to sit in a chair that somebody's already sitting in. It's like, no, I'm already here. Go
Yeah,
find your
yeah,
own chair.
exactly.
And that's some of the issue that really disturbs me with that idea. So, Kev Baker, Scotty Lopez, and Brent and I all did a show just recently, and Scotty brought that up, and I have kind of the same thought process as he does, and that is, what if we aren't what if we aren't natural to the planet, but we came from, say, Mars? After they depleted all their resources, they came here, and
Hmm.
now we're trying to go back to do something like that. So it kind of follows the kind of idea that I have with this gal's story, because it makes perfect sense to me. As long as you don't become those aliens that go and wipe out an entire world
Hmm.
and this kind of thing. I mean, this is how I think. Sorry.
No, that's interesting, and it's just as valid. I mean, that's the weird part of all this, and we're just on the outside looking in, and we obviously we're not claiming that we're going to get to the bottom of this mystery Scooby Doo, but it's incredibly interesting. There's so many questions that come up with these kind of discussions because you just got to wonder. Now, I don't doubt for a minute, as I stated before, that these things are here. It's just I don't know. There's so many questions. There's so many things that I would want to ask if I was in that situation. But I guess the biggest affront is that they do feel entitled to do whatever they want, and there doesn't seem to be a recognition of the sovereignty of the individual. Because they have this agreement, they feel like, well, it's okay that and to me, it seems like they're treating us like cattle. And speaking of cattle, why do they core the anuses? That's another question I have. It's like, what are they learning from anuses of cows? So I'm just gonna put that out there on the table. I don't know. That's
Who knows? It might be a delicacy for them. Who knows, mate?
it's the McAnus. It's like the McRib. It's not really ribs, but no. How about any other ones, brother?
Oh, look, I have had a lady come on the show, and this is a really fantastic Yowie encounter, and it's probably one of our most downloaded episodes, and it kind of happened just down the road from where I live, which is absolutely fascinating. So, it comes from season 4, episode 1. It's called Yowie Terror in Far North Queensland, and this has to be one of the most full-on Yowie encounters that I've ever heard because it didn't just happen to her. It happened to her family, and it happened to her boyfriend at the time, who basically left the relationship because he could not deal with the goings on that was happening to her while living in this house. Because what makes the story so unique is that there was a family of Yowies. So there was a male, a female, and a child, but there was potentially a rake with them as well.
Oh, Jesus. Ugh.
A rake?
Rake.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the rake was getting in the house, and it was getting into the little girl's bedroom, and they would regularly see this creature in there.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Yeah, it's to be honest, I don't know how she carried on living there because she stayed there for a while, and she was trying to talk to the person she was renting the house off. He was really like, that's not real. Obviously, you're making this up. But she goes, no, this is 1000% happening. And what started to happen was these Yowies and this rake started to make themselves a little bit more common to her. They were leaving gifts for her. She would leave gifts for them. So it was kind of like this trading thing. But I've never heard anything like it because the rake is, you hear these things like, I guess the old school term for it would have been a ghoul.
Yeah.
And she said it didn't look like a person. Well, it had the shape of a figure, but it didn't look like a person in the face. She said when I looked at the eyes and the mouth, there were just these black holes. That's all it was. And there wasn't anything solid to it. It wasn't transparent, but she could see like it was constantly fuzzy around the edges, which makes you go, what could that be?
Right.
Like I've heard of anything really like that because you hear these stories of the rake, and there's that great video that you shared a little while ago where that individual sees it in his backyard, but you can see there's a very solid form to it.
Mm-hmm.
But this lady, she said this thing would look solid, but when you got closer to it, and she would get within, how would she got in about 12 feet, within 12 feet of this thing, which is really, really close. She said it would just appear like it's fuzzy, like there's noise around it or something would be the way that she would describe that.
That's weird. But that is the first time I've heard of those things not acting just animalistic. Every account that I've ever heard, and there aren't many out there, but that deal with the rake or the ghoul, is that they are, I don't know, they're just twisted.
Yeah.
That video that you mentioned was really tough for me because I don't get freaked out by videos. I don't. I watch thousands of them. I'm always out there looking to see what people are putting on the table and stuff. But that one bugged me. That one bugged me on a really deep level, and I don't know why. But I just looked at it and I was just like, no, and that really disturbed me. Whatever the hell that was, and if it was indeed a rake, that's just really troubling.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that video, and if the people watching the stream haven't seen it, 100% go giving it a look because it'll keep you awake for hours tonight. It just moves so unhuman-like.
Yeah.
There's just something off.
Yeah. Everything about the way it moves
is
just
really unsettling.
Yeah, everything about it. It's like it's got its arms kind of tucked in, like I don't know, kind of like what a velociraptor's arms are, just kind of bent in and like the palms down at the chest level, and I don't know. It's got a really creepy gait to it. The way its head moves, I don't know. Whatever. I just felt like it was completely dangerous, and even though it was on the outside of a wall of a house, on the other side of a closed window, to me, my guts were just saying, get away, get away, get away, get away, get away. I don't know how else to, but it was just a almost a primal response. So I don't know what they are. I assume they must be incredibly deadly creatures, but because I think, a lot of times you see the pictures of them, it's like, oh, they got, the arms of a skinny kid, but it's kind of one of those things that you kind of just know that it's capable of just some fierce ferocity, because otherwise that thing wouldn't be living and living wild of all places. It must be very
Yeah,
good at
exactly.
what it does.
And that's a really good point that you bring up. Is like, how do these things live?
Yeah.
Because I guess the witness reports of these things are incredibly rare. You compare it to Yowies, Bigfoot, things like that. Like those, and I guess in the sense of the cryptozoology world, those things pop up quite frequently.
Mhm.
But things like these rakes, it's a very rare thing,
Right.
and it makes you wonder: is there a limited supply of these out in the world? Is like where do they come from? Do they disappear? Are they? Is it a the guest I had on? She said it felt more demonic than anything.
Yeah. And maybe that's where my intuitive disgust came from. But I was just thinking about that, like what do they eat? And when you're speaking of ghouls, they were classically known as these creatures that would dig up graves and devour dead bodies. Well,
Yeah.
maybe that changed when we started doing things like putting formaldehyde in our corpses. That suddenly that was no longer a viable food source. And,
Yeah.
maybe that's why they're not observed digging up graves any longer, is because they can't eat them.
You know what? That leads on to the next point of the story, because she said this thing would climb on a roof because it was apparently a very light creature compared to the Yowies, because these things were monstrous. They would weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds. But the rake would actually climb onto her roof, and you would hear the rake grabbing rats and smacking them against the roof to kill them and eat them.
Oh.
Wow.
Well, I guess they're kind of handy to have around then.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, she grew to live with these things, and as terrifying as they were, she really started to just accept that they're here. I'm here. So let's live in harmony. Which, like at the start of this episode, I don't know how people do that.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, but you got to give her, your hat. My hat's off to her, because you got to give her a lot of credit that she was able to get to that point. Most people
Yeah.
would not have done that. I got to let the cat out because he's going to make a hell of a lot of racket here pretty quick. He got shut into the studio. So, gentlemen, talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
So, I'm always interested in rake stuff. As a matter of fact, I just posted that rake video that we were talking about. The guy in the backyard, and he's videoing through the window. I just posted it in Skype for you guys and in the chat. And I got to tell you, yeah, Brent was talking about the visceral response to it. And it just seems to me like it'd be a thing of just pure evil. I don't, like you said, I don't know how anybody can live peacefully with one of those things. But there you have it. Apparently it happens.
Yeah, it's quite incredible, because there's this thing of adapt or die. That's a very primal way of looking at things. But I guess if you can't get yourself out of one of these situations, because the real world works really quite differently to how you would react in a moment. You'd say move out of the house, go live elsewhere. You'll move to a different state, whatever, things like that. But in the real world, it doesn't quite work like that. You have to work out a practical solution to, I guess, these paranormal or crypto situations. And for her to just carry on and keep living with it it blew my mind, because it's kind of like, how do you keep going back to that house? How do you feel safe? How do you just keep doing your normal life? And she just started to adapt. She goes, look, I learned to lock my doors a lot more. We got bigger dogs, and we kept them inside the house, because not only would these creatures, come into the house, but they would also have these really weird physical effects on them. And I don't know if it was more physical or if it was more psychological, but they would be in their house and they would start to see things warp. So I don't know if this has anything to do with maybe an effect that they can do to a person, But it was quite interesting because they were able to make this lady's fingers look like they would just continue to grow. Like they were getting like a foot long.
Oh, that's disturbing. Did she ever figure out how it was getting in the house, or did it seem to be supernaturally getting access?
It was where she lives. It is a very rural property.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know if this is what it's like in the States, but when people have these rural properties, they're a little bit more relaxed with how they are with their security. And a lot of the windows on these types of properties don't have like screens or anything.
Mhm.
So when you open the window, you're open to the elements type of thing. So you could
Oh,
hop in and out of this actual window, and I dare say that's how this creature was getting in.
wow. Yeah, I'd be investing in some like serious security screens. I mean, at least I would have to try. But man, again, my hat's off to her because she was able to find a balance with that, and that to me just seems beyond comprehension. But she still was able to do that, and on her own too. I mean, it's not like she had someone to hide behind. So she's got to be about the bravest person I've ever heard
Oh,
of.
totally. Very ballsy. and and you know what? It's an interesting point there is she actually did try to get these creatures on film because I did a live call-in show with her, and we had listeners calling in and they asked her a couple of questions and like, well, why don't you film them? And she goes, I've tried so many times. There's whenever they came close, it just seemed to suck the energy out of all the batteries of the cameras.
Yeah. Well,
And
we hear that same thing from a lot of Bigfoot researchers. That
yeah,
the
yeah.
trail cams will mysteriously malfunction. Portable cameras, same thing. There seems to be that I don't know, for lack of a better term, and I can only make assumptions, but it sounds like this real strange EMF field that surrounds these things. And again, we get that crossover between that and spirits.
Absolutely.
Draining batteries is so commonplace.
So what's interesting about it is I've had a couple of research teams come onto the podcast before and talk about these types of effects on equipment,
Hmm.
and what it is and to put it in like really simple terms that we can all kind of get on board with is how you hear these stories about you're on a ghost hunt or something like that and the room gets cold.
Sure. Yep.
What happens is either a spirit or an entity has taken the energy out of that room. And of course, heat is a source of energy.
Right.
So it's essentially doing that to the surroundings. And of course, batteries, they hold energy. And the theory is that, anything that has an energy source, it kind of gets strained because it's also not uncommon for this particular group of investigators anyway, that they said they will go out on a hunt. And if they encounter something that is quite a full on type of investigation, they would wake up the next day feeling like they've got a hangover because everything's just been taken out of them.
Yeah, I often, and this is real popular on the televised paranormal shows. It's like use our energy, and I'm like, oh no, you stupid people, why would you do that? I don't know.
A haunted hangover for the morning.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know why these people invite that stuff into their lives, but from all reports, it's apparently safe to do if you know what you're doing. But I feel like, how do you know what you're doing when it comes to this type of stuff?
yeah.
Everything's a guessing game. I don't think there's a rule book out there for how to interact with a ghost.
No, I think that plenty of people have tried to write it, but I don't I don't know that I'd follow any of them. But and I'm not being super critical. I mean, I understand, and I think part of the push is that when you have a show that's based upon evidence, you're really trying real hard to keep evidence coming because that's how you keep a show. But I think
Absolutely.
that kind of thing is I think really irresponsible because that's I think it perpetuates that idea. Well, like I'm going to open myself up so they can use my energy too. Well, what are you going to gain? You might be gaining an attachment. You might be gaining some kind of demonic oppression. You might be gaining all kinds of things just for the sake of getting a good EVP. Well, good luck on that. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of I get asked all the time about, well, have you invited anything into your world, Kay? Because you do this type of podcast where you talk to these people who have these incredibly scary encounters. Like, why would you want to invite something like that into your life? And that kind of leads me to a question for you. Like, have you found anything happen to you individually, Don, or you, Brent?
Wow, how much time we got, Don? Let me just tell you a quick story. And I could probably pull up the video of it again. When I was on Daniela Aiello's show, which is Hidden Existence, I was just on there a couple weeks ago now, Don. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I was on there, and of course I was right here in my chair, and I'm doing the show, and suddenly the guys from Blue Line Bigfoot, and it's Adam in particular, he comes on with Jake, and they say, "Hey, there was a weird light by your left shoulder in the
Oh,
show."
wow.
And I was like, "What, really?" And so I didn't know, I didn't think much of it at the time, but I was really curious. So I was on for a while, and then had to get off to do my own show. But I did check it out, and no kidding, there's an orb that appears right above my left shoulder on the wall, where that it says warning, and there's a ghost on it, and it's a little cheap cardboard thing, but a little light appears there and then drifts over here and then goes down and disappears. And it's I mean, it's not obfuscated, there's no bugs in the air yet. It's too cold here, so and it does, I slowed it down, went frame by frame, and that light just appears. It fades in over a period of three frames. It fades in and does this little track over to my left shoulder and then down a little bit, and fades out over a period of 3 frames, and it's gone. It couldn't have gone behind anything, because there's nothing in between here. The black curtain on the wall behind me is actually on the wall. There's not, like, it's not shooting out from, and it could have gone behind a fold of it. So for whatever reason that happened. I've seen shadow people. I was sitting here at my desk. I've got a series of 3 monitors in front of me here, and there's a space beyond that in this studio room where I do music on the other side. And I was sitting here looking this way, which is my rightmost monitor, and I was looking on the screen, and I saw what I thought was my wife's head kind of walk in a little, like, bent over, and then walk behind the monitor and then duck down. And I'm like, well, what is she doing? Because I wasn't looking directly, but it was only a matter of like 20 degrees elevation difference from my head on vision. And I'm like, what is she doing? And I'm like, what are you doing? And there was no response. So I'm like, well, what's going on? So I stood up and went around, and then I realized I had a bunch of boxes back there. There was nowhere for her to be walking. And there, of course, was nobody there. So I'd seen that with my own eyes. The planchette pulls off the Ouija board about once a week and hits the floor. Don loves that because it's right behind him. Tons of electronic issues that could be or couldn't be. I mean, that's a little hard to quantify because it's electronics, and God knows with the internet and electronics, all kinds of weird crap happens. So I don't necessarily chalk that up as paranormal, but it is weird. So, I mean, I've had lots of different things fall off. Everything on the wall behind me here, Kade, is nailed up. And the reason it's nailed and not adhered with some kind of adhesive is because every morning I would come down and everything on the wall behind me would be on the floor. So,
Oh, wow.
So I've nailed everything up now, and it stays. so true stories. Yeah. Now, I didn't invite those things. What was that?
How do you feel like when all that was going on? Do you thinking, oh, am I messing with something here that I maybe shouldn't?
No, because I've actually grown up around paranormal stuff since I was about, I think my first ghost experience was in my early 20s, and then ever since I've just been dealing with this. So, I mean, it's not really that far removed from normal for me, but the only thing that concerns me, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but every once in a while I get an email from people saying that weird things happen to them when they listen to my show, specifically.
Oh.
And just had someone email me just the other day that they were listening to the show, and this magnet on their fridge, it was a magnet clip, basically exploded or fell apart and hit the ground. And she said that it doesn't make any sense because it's a magnet. There was nothing else it could, it just kind of destroyed itself. And I hear pictures. I heard another gentleman emailed me and he said that he was listening to my show and a picture of his dad fell off the wall, which shouldn't have happened. It was on a hook or a nail. It shouldn't have been able to happen, but it hit the ground. Now, the good thing is he thinks that maybe it was his dad trying to send him a message like, hey, I'm here, because his dad had passed on. And so, but that's the part that concerns me more than anything, because, you know, what if things happen here, that's fine. But when things are happening to people outside that are just, you know, being supportive or enjoy the show, that, you know, that to me is more of a cautionary tale. And I, you know, I'm not sure what to do with that.
So what you're saying is that people should unsubscribe from the Paranormal Podcast and subscribe to the Believe Podcast because it's much safer.
Well, I don't know. I mean, and it sounds, maybe it's irresponsible of me to bring it up, but at the same time, I mean, it's a very real thing that people have emailed me about, and it's, you know, I really truly care about the people that are listening to the show, and that makes me wonder. But I think I truly believe that what's going on is that they may have someone that loves them near to them, and they're trying to reach out because, you know, they're in that zone of watching a paranormal show. So maybe these energies of their loved ones are saying, hey, I'm here with you or something. You know, I don't think that I don't want to believe that it's nefarious, of course. I don't know. It's probably stupid to bring it up at all, but I mean, it is a concern of mine.
Hey,
No,
Brent.
I think it's a fair concern.
Yeah. What, Don?
Hey, Brent, just so you know, a listener just gave $5 chemtrail mix, so you can buy some sage.
Well, thank you much, brother. I appreciate that. I do have some, actually, and I do actually have to sage regularly here in the home, and it does seem to help. I mean, it does if the energy feels a little sharp. Now, here's the thing that I think that it's an old term of traditional magic. It's called magnetism, and magnetism basically states that when you are focusing and giving energy to something, you are in essence drawing it to you. And I think that by, you know, in essence of doing a paranormal show, that energy is heightened and it can be a beacon of sorts. So I do sage and go around and knock down the energy. But good night, Kathy. Thank you. And by the way, Kathy, happy birthday yesterday. I'm sorry I didn't know before, but happy birthday, and I hope you had a wonderful day yesterday. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just being totally transparent here for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I mean, I guess I haven't heard those experiences from my listeners, but I have heard from guests who have come on the show that them coming forward to talk about it has kind of stirred up the energy again. And, you know, some of them have had more run-ins with the entities or the spirits that they've mentioned during their interviews. So it's I think talking about this stuff definitely does build, you know, gets things moving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that's better. Maybe that actually exonerates me from responsibility, because maybe it's the fact that they're taking part and it's bringing up that energy in them and around them. So, you know, I don't know, but it is curious. But I think that, I think everybody should probably know how to do things like saging and cleansing. I think that's just, you know, a good thing to know, especially if you're interested in the paranormal, if you're pursuing the paranormal at all, that, it's all based around energy. And so...
Is there an app? Because I'll be all over it then.
An app? Well, currently in development, Kade, is actually the Paranormal Portal protection app.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get that. Don, what about yourself? Have you ever encountered something after doing a show? Or are you still in the loser club?
For the most part, I'm still in the loser club. Now, I can't say that, you know, things haven't happened, weird things haven't happened while I was in the studio. There have been a few things. And one thing, the most profound thing, well, no, two. The two most profound things was 2018, January 2018, we had the super blue blood moon. And Brent was just off. He was off his game. You know, he was not feeling good. And everything just crashed. You know, the whole show crashed. It was a Wednesday night. I was affected by that. And so, you know, I got a little fuzzy headed. I started stumbling around the studio. I went through two mics that night. Everything I touched just fell to crap.
Oh,
Um,
gee.
it was an absolute horrible night. And so, that was maybe some kind of maybe it was my personal empathy that was picking up on his energy that was off. So you talk about metaphysical things like that. Yeah, that's happened to me. Um, but the other thing is in the studio we're in now. About a year ago, we used to run this Ghost Box app,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden the app went off, and just on my left shoulder, or on my right shoulder, because Brent sits to my left, over my right shoulder where there's nothing but a corner. So if you look at Brent's screen there, you see the little skeleton and then the Bigfoot sign, and then
Yeah,
that's a corner, and I sit with my shoulder that corner, and something like walked through me. I just had this electric feeling, and all the hair on my body stood up, and it got cold, but it was just briefly. And then Brent goes, "Oh yeah, something just walked right through you." I'm like, "Great."
Yeah.
Um, but as for me, otherwise, no, I don't think I've ever had an experience without Brent being present. So I'm going to bring Brent.
Maybe it's me. Although, I've been sitting here doing the show and had felt a hand come down on my shoulder, I felt and every sensation of a hand, and I looked over and there's no hand there, but it felt like
Oh,
somebody just rested their hand on my shoulder, like, and I like to think that that was maybe my dad stopping in. I felt ice cold only on one half of my body, just feeling like a really cold chill down this whole arm, and my other arm is. And when I took my other hand and put it on there, my arm is ice cold, and so I felt those real wild temperature variations that don't seem to make sense. I mean, there's a ceiling fan here going slowly, and that's circulating the air. It's not like there's going to be a pocket of ice cold air here and not over here. So I mean, I've experienced all of those things. It's just seems to be part of the journey, I guess.
yeah, absolutely. And I've been quite lucky. I haven't had anything like that happen to me.
Hmm.
Um, I when I do my live streams, when I do the calling shows, I make sure I leave all the windows open so it's extra spooky because I'm very much a believer that your mind can play these tricks on you as well when you put yourself into certain situations like that. Because
Mm.
I every night I'll take my dog out to go to the loo, and before we put him in his crate and he goes to bed, and every time I'm out there, I'm always like, oh, something spooky could be happening out here, and you just have those really simple thoughts,
Yeah.
and you can kind of the chills, and you can really spin any type of situation because the mind is a bastard, and it will try to protect you, especially in those dark situations, because it's just kind of programmed like that to go.
Yeah.
When you're in the dark, you have to be on your toes. So we're gonna invent something scary happening here, and because I have that kind of mindset when it comes to, I guess, anything that spooky might be happening towards me,
Hmm.
maybe I'm just blocking out all this fantastic ghost activity, and I'm just like, that's my mind trying to trick me because I know I'm in the dark.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what would you do? I mean, let's say, for instance, tonight you're sitting there and suddenly you feel an ice cold chill in a hand on your shoulder. What would you do?
Uh,
How
I
would you
don't know.
handle it? How
I'll
would
I'll, I'll come on the paranormal portal to share my story.
Well, you're going to be on tomorrow night, so we'll see what happens now that you've challenged the universe. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
No, it's. I mean, are you? Are you? I mean, obviously, you're a person that believes in this stuff, but are you feeling that maybe you probably will never experience these things firsthand? I know you've had several different experiences. Like when you were on the show, you talked about you seeing the UFO when you're out on the ocean, and that you'd seen a Yowie that you believe was a Yowie anyway. And I firmly believe you did as well. But have you had ghostly experiences?
You know what? I used to be a photographer back in the day, and I
Hmm.
did have this encounter with, and this is, I'm really cautious about the encounters that I've had and the way I share them because I'm very, very skeptical about the things that I've experienced, because I don't want to take away from anyone who's come on the show and shared their encounters, because for me to not quite full on believe my own encounter, I don't want that to take away from anyone else's.
Right.
But essentially, what happened with me was I was staying in this very, very old house. There was a lot of history to it. It's been through a lot of storms, because where I live, we're very susceptible to cyclones or hurricanes from where you are.
Yeah.
And we had one of the highest rated ones ever go through this city. And this house absolutely got blown to pieces. So I was staying in this house. It was apparently a very, very old house. Someone had passed away in this house, and I was placed into this bedroom where the person passed away. All not known to me at this stage. And I'm effectively sleeping in this room, and I see at the end of the bed, I see a figure. And a little bit of context to the story is that the bedroom I was in had all the groomsmen's outfits in a cupboard.
Okay.
And the cupboard was to the side of my bed. So I was sleeping in this little single bed. The cupboard's on the other side, and that's all that was really in this room because it's quite small. And as I'm like laying there in the middle of the night, I see this dark figure come into the room and go over to the cupboard and open and close it. And me in my like half sleepy state is thinking, okay, this is just one of the groomsmen that have gone in there to grab potentially something for their suit, or maybe they're ironing it. Who knows? I was in such a like that dream type of you're half awake, half not type of thing.
Sure.
And I kind of asked the guys about it the next day. I said, "Oh, who did you grab your suit? Because you made a bloody lot of noise." And they were like, "No, none of us were in there."
Ooh.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then you have to take on their word that they weren't just trying to, I guess, cover up the fact that maybe they were doing something to the suits.
Well, it could be. Could be.
Could be.
It's just anything is possible,
Well, that's right. And I'll never say that it wasn't a ghost encounter, but I'll never say that it was, because it's just one of those things where I don't want to put a definite, pin in that, because once you do, you it becomes something that you can't really take back.
Right. Right. No, I think you're right. I do think that there's probably both sides of that. Is that there's the people that want to believe that everything is a ghost, and like for instance, I guess one of my personal struggles is orbs and photos, and you'll know
mate,
exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Don't even get me started. I'm gonna delete Facebook because of that type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's just orbs everywhere. Oh, look at the loved ones that are all around you, and that stuff. And it's like, wow, as much. And I understand people are coming from a good place with that, but it's just not accurate. And that's hard for me because, I'm not a photographer, but I have, I've been through a bunch of college classes. I'm just short of a associate's degree in photography. And I've done professional photography, and I have a little bit of knowledge about how this works, and it's tough because I want to say so many times, no, that's definitely not, and this and this is why, and if you look here, you'll see this reflective surface that's causing a lens flare here, and you can tell by blah blah blah. Now, I think that's, on the other hand, I've also fallen victim to believing some that were. I believe they were, but it turned out they weren't. But it had more to do with trail cams, which I'm not as familiar with. I didn't realize some of the idiosyncrasies of trail cams, and so those have kind of thrown me once in a while. But when it comes to just cameras and photography, there's so many things that can cause these, quote unquote orbs to appear. Now, I will say that the one that appeared over my shoulder, I believe, was real. I really do. It was really a small little, one-off event. At least that's the first time I've ever heard of a visual anomaly being captured on film, but it was so small that, it's easily discarded by anybody. I mean, it wasn't a real profound orb. It was about the size of a pencil eraser. I mean, it was really that small. but it was truly anomalous to me. I looked at it, I blew it up, I did it frame by frame, and I can't figure out where it came from. And so I really think that that really is accurate. And I think there are some out there, but I think that there's so many misrepresented orb photos out there that it's really given that whole approach a bad name.
Yeah, it's one of the things that can really discredit the paranormal world is orb photos, blurry photos, things like that. It's so it's frustrating on my behalf because it's kind of like I have to I'm probably not as lenient as I should be because I know it's just a lot of misunderstanding and
Sure.
they're not photo professionals like I would be. You know, they wouldn't know that the camera's got a slow shutter speed, which is causing their loved one to have a blurry face. There's nothing demonic or spiritual about it. But there's some where it's just like you're not even trying.
Like the ones that are out there in when there's mist in the air or
Yep.
raindrops sprinkling, those are huge. Yeah.
Mm.
So, oh
And
man.
that type of thing, I think it just really discredits anything real that's happened. And I guess that's the part that I get frustrated with.
No, and I appreciate that because you're right. Because when the skeptics want to really slam those of us that are working to establish this as credible and real, they do grab those and they say, "Well, look, this is what your community thinks is orbs, and clearly this is not because A, B, C, D, E." And they'll absolutely debunk the hell out of it and make people look bad. And I guess my approach is I think you have to, especially with photos, you have to approach it absolutely like a skeptic and then prove it. You've got to come from a state of no way and then arrive to the, well, maybe this is real.
Yeah, absolutely. I always go through a process of elimination that the photo or the video has to make me believe because whenever I see something like that, I'm always straight to the point of I don't believe it,
Yeah.
and then I have to, I guess, start to process a process of elimination of okay,
Right.
what makes this believable?
Right. Good call. Well,
Because it's so easy to go out there and just say I believe everything, and then you know
yeah, that's
what's even
what isn't true. Oh, I mean, so here's the thing is that it's hard to say what isn't true and what is, but I think that it's probably beneficial for all of us to take and try to look at things like a skeptic. Even if you're not skeptical, try to look at them from a skeptic's point of view. And if it still stands up, then offer it out there as potential proof. But don't put your heart on it. Don't put don't wear your heart on it because you might get proven wrong. And there's several examples of me not knowing and putting stuff out there and having somebody that did know come up and go, oh, well, this is what it is and here's why. And it's like, oh, and it's, you have to be willing to take the advice of other people that may know more than you. And so I think too many people are coming from this in an emotional place, like this is proof because I say it is, and if you try to debunk that, it's like a personal attack, and we can't make progress that way.
Absolutely. If you're going to put something out into the world, you have to remove all emotion from it because
Yeah.
once you do that, you get too connected to it. It becomes something where if anyone says anything to that, it's a personal attack on you. And
Right.
at the end of the day, why share it if you're not going to have an open discussion about anything?
Amen, brother. Well, you know what time it is? It's
Time?
it's what was that, Don?
Hammer time?
It's the end of the portal, guys. We've went through 2 hours that quickly. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
That's insane. You know what? It's from the future here on my end. So you guys are still playing catch up.
Well, why don't you give me the lottery numbers on Friday? Send them to me on Friday, my Friday, and we'll talk. But thank you so
Coming
much,
up
brother,
later.
for being on here. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. It's great talking to you. Thanks so much for making the time for being here.
No, it's been fantastic. It's been something that we've been trying to tee up for a little while, and I'm the worst person in the world with the worst schedule going on. So I've been kind of putting things off just with the craziness of the world at the moment. But you know, we got here in the end, and it's been good fun.
Yeah, it's a great discussion. And of course, you're going to be here tomorrow night to walk us through the Night Terrors. We're going to get Kade come back tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, on the Night Terrors, and he's going to bring us some of his greatest emails he's received and walk us through the Night Terrors. Yeah, that's tomorrow night here on the portal. So
I think everything about that will be my inability to read an email.
It's okay, Kade. We're all patient.
I'll make the word some big.
Yeah, really big. A lot of time to practice. Really big font. That'll help. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Don. Thank you, brother. Good to see you.
Thanks, Kade.
No, it's been a pleasure, mate. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it happens.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for us tonight here on the Paranormal Portal. We are going to be back tomorrow night. Kade and I will return. And Don, you're welcome to come if you're available. We'd love to see you again.
Unfortunately, I have to grind tomorrow night, so I won't be able to join you.
Okay. Well, we'll be thinking of you. We'll have you in our hearts as we're going through the night. But thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. It's always an incredible journey. And thank you to all of you for all of your support and love and for sharing word about the portal to people you know that love the paranormal. And remember to watch for the podcasts, released Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week. There's always a new one coming out, and we hope you'll check those out too. If you like the podcast, you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes and leave us a good review. That really means a lot, and it goes a long way into getting our shows recommended to other people who may be involved. Yeah.
Don't forget to let Kade pimp his channel again.
I don't know what you're talking about, Don. I haven't even spoken about the Believe podcast that's available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, BelievePod.com. You know, just search Believe anywhere and you'll find that podcast. It's pretty good. Some say it may even be better than the Portal.
Yeah. Well, you know, they can say all they want, but we'll still be here grinding them out for you. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. We'll be back tomorrow night with Kade and I doing the Night Terrors. So have a good night and sweet dreams.